So the new panel has arrived. Hopefully it's a case of plugging it in, checking the instructions, and it works straight away. Let's see. Welcome to the back of Henley-on-Thames layout, where the turntable area has sat as it has since the summer when I first started, last started trying to get the turntable mechanism to work. All the post-it notes have still stayed in place, and basically the turntable's not been used since then. I'm obviously looking forward to being able to get the back scene put back and for the railway to be back to normal, I suppose. Over in the corner here are all the remaining bits as they were left when everything was sent back to Mike Green at Swanage, and with the exception obviously of the extension lead which I've just brought over. So I'm going to mark this old panel here so as to not get the two confused. I'm going to write on here faulty, so there's no confusion about the two panels. So the power supply is now plugged in and the cable gets plugged into the circuit board just here, and for the time being, for testing purposes, the circuit board is just propped on the side here, nowhere in connection with the rest of the layout, and the rest of the layout is not energized at the moment, and obviously there's nothing going to be on the tracks that's that could conceivably get any other power into it. So the rest of the circuit, the rest of the layout is dead. This power supply, of course, is a replacement because the original one that was supplied was in several parts when I opened up the box when it arrived here in July 2019. The cables here, these are going down to the turntable underneath, and they supply the power to the stepper motor. So that goes into there. I've then got a long cable, couple of meters long I suppose, with telephone type RGB sockets on there. This cable also had to be changed because the original one was faulty, didn't work at all, so this is the replacement one which arrived here, I think it was about September last year. So this goes into the back of the units here. Slots into place there, and then over the side here slots into, changing hands, slots into here. So that's the circuit board. It's now live, energized, whatever, and basically is ready to go. The panel here is similarly ready. So this is actually not going to be very easy to do one-handed, but I'm going to try it as best I can, because by moving the center off switch, it is off in the center, it goes to run and it goes to program on the other side. So if we go to run, and by pressing the start button, the turntable, as you see, now moves round until I take my finger off the button. Okay, so I've aligned up the turntable there at the head, and my Model U figure there denotes the head, as does the sign on the bridge, which was made for me by Phil, aka Harlequin, at RM Web. So star moves it one way, hash, I'll do that again, hash moves the other way, So we clearly have power to the turntable in that respect. I'm trying to juggle it in that respect. It's working. And that is nicely lined up. But obviously the whole idea about the panel that I'm holding in my hand and waving around like some what's it, is that's supposed to then correspond, the numbers correspond to the different numbers on the tracks. So I should be able to program it to move from one track to another at ease, and it should just be able to do it. It should then retain its memory and everything else like that. So I'm now going to pause a second, catch up with the instructions, because it's a case here of having to read the instructions. So having read the instructions, I'm now going to move the switch to program, and the red light is now flashing, which is correct. I then have to go and use the hash key. Just check that. Yep, using the hash key, which is correct. And I'm taking it to the first road to be programmed, which is number 1 over here. Now I want to program it on the head, so I have to wait for the chap, can't remember whether he's been given a name yet, move him round to position number 1. Now I have to nudge it round with the hash key. If I miss it, if I miss a line, I then have to go 10 steps beyond and then go back. Align it and it'll be fine. It'll be saved in the memory at that point. So coming round, still finger on hash key. Here comes our engineer, shed foreman perhaps. It's a bit like watching paint dry, so apologies. So as we come up, this is now me moving my finger up and down to make sure we get correct alignment, which is there. And at that point, having got there, I'm going to try and rest that down. The red light here, red LED is still flashing, so I want to give it number 1, at which point the LED then stopped flashing momentarily, so that has now saved that into position number 1. We then go back to the pad, press the hash key again, which sets it off. Off we go, and we're going back to number 2. So with the finger on here, the red light, red LED, looks more yellow or orange there, but it is a red LED. It's still flashing, so it's still in program mode, and I'm bringing it right the way around. Until our engineer, shed foreman, is ready to be aligned with road number 2. Okay, we're getting that. So my finger's still on the hash button, which is moving it round here. Come up to number 2, and we're going to align this track. And again, what I'm going to do is press the number 2 button, and that has now stored that into the system. So I've now programmed off video tracks 3, 4 and 5. I'm now taking it round, pressing the hash button again, taking it round, and I'm going to program track 6. Now the important thing is at this stage I've just programmed track 5, that was the last one I've done, and obviously track 5, just move that out of the way, track 5 is in the center panel, in the center section of the keypad, 2, 5, 8 and 0. That's where I had problems with the other keypad. And I suspect, and I've thought all along, that when Mike, the useless guy in Swanage, sent the panel back without checking it, just stuck it in the post, he sent me the faulty one back rather than the one that was working. And I think I've just proved that by being able to program tracks 2 and 5. So I'm just going to come round to do the last one, program track number 6, and then I've got to start programming the tails. So at the moment, with our shed foreman is our head, I've then got to work on the other end of doing the tails. And at that point, because I've not managed to get that far at all, I then need to reread the instructions. And obviously the other noticeable thing as well is that moving the turntable round as much as I have now, the I don't know, slight shudder or whatever it was, there was a change in pitch of the motor that has now gone as well, ignoring the fact the washing machine's on in the far side of the railway room. So just waiting for the shed foreman to come round to track 6. Obviously this is our entrance exit road here, which goes through to the rest of the railway, takes us out to back to Henley-on-Thames and the world beyond there. So we're coming around here, exactly the same process as I've done already. Bring it round, get the tracks lined up, and then press button number 6. At the moment the red LED is flashing red. That goes solid, and it goes, actual fact, goes to yellow. So there we are, that is track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 now programmed. And the reason for doing it all over here, and why I have to program it here and then also be able to know that the indexing is going to work, apart from the fact I've paid for it, but the indexing is going to work, because normally I'd be over there somewhere. And that distance from here, I don't know if I can actually get that into perspective. The distance is probably metre, just over a metre, maybe 1200 mil, something like that. In old money, it's about 4 foot, I suppose. My control panel itself sits the other side of the coaling area, and that's underneath that is where all my controls are for the points, the base station for the gauge master controller I use, and it's basically my position, because as you can see, the other side there is where I've got more space on the railway. I've got space at this end to move around, but the space I've got here is minimal. It's just enough space for me to get in, so I don't want to be coming over here just to turn the turntable around. I've got to know from over the other side that it's going to work correctly and align, because otherwise there's just no point in having it, because I won't be able to use it properly. And it's much as the railway is set about 1200 mil off the floor, give or take, it's a bit of a faff to keep having to crawl through all the time. So there we are. There's also the context. Obviously the rest of the station building, which you don't normally see from this side, still needs a bit of work. Obligatory bus and van and that sort of thing. And that, in actual fact, that's the back of the Tumas coal office, which was actually in that location. It needs a whacking great big chimney to come up. It was quite a distinctive chimney there. But on the real Henley-on-Thames in the 30s, that was the only coal office, apart from a small one just here, and that area at the front there is where the cattle dock is. There was a very small coal office there. At this stage I don't know which coal agent it belonged to, but that was certainly the Tumas office. And quickly looking around the railway, you can see the scope of how much more there is to do. The turntable is just a small element of it, but clearly an important one, because it stopped me running the railway for the last few months, because a loco will come in to platform 1 here, reverse round, and what happens then? Well, it has to go back seam, turn it round, because the couplings are only on one end. Anyway, I'm now going to look at programming the tail, obviously this end, and come back in a second. Then the second one, so I need to start with number 1 again, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, which means that I'm going for this end. I'm going for the tail. In order to do that, I need to change the setting on the keypad. At the moment, it's looking good that it will change, and it should be okay, because again, that's been a problem, because I need to use 0, and the buttons in the center line, those are the ones that were faulty on the other controller, which is over on the workbench, which my workbench is where the lamp is at the end there. So that's still over there. This is the one that works. So we're going to do all of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the tail. Then we're ready for final testing, and according to the instructions, if I press, once it's out of the program mode, it's in program at the moment, take it to the center, and then it disables the start and the hash key, and the light doesn't flash then. So I get a loco in, turn it around the turntable, do whatever, send it to a track. Let's say it comes into track 4, and I press track 4. It'll go the shortest direction, so it'll go either clockwise, anti-clockwise, whatever it wants to do, and that's fine. Loco in here. So if I then want to take the loco back onto the table and do a full 180, perhaps to go to number 6 and send it out, I should be able to press 06 in this case, and it should take it to number 6, but it's doing 180 in the process. That's what it says in the instructions first. So what I have to do now is, we're flashing red at the moment. Hopefully that does come out on the video. It's flashing red. So I now have to press 0 and it flashes green. I've never been able to do that before. You can clearly see the difference in colour. I can see that looking over the phone as well. So it's now flashing green. So I'm now going to take my tail to number 1 first. So I do the same thing again, just check the instructions. Yep, so I'm nudging it in exactly the same manner. I'm using the hash key to take it. So finger on the hash key, taking it to track 1, and I'm going to line the tail Is that lined up? No. Okay. So, sorry I did that off camera, but I pressed number 1. So let's take it using the hash key round to number 2. So our shed foreman is here, he's coming around, he needs to have a name. My intention is not to keep him on there, my intention is only for him to be there to aid the programming stage. All I know the difference between one and the other will be the sign that Phil did for me, and that's the sign on the edge of the bridge, and that sign is an exact copy of the sign that's on the end of the bridge at Minehead on the West Somerset Railway. So we're bringing round here. I'm going to align number 2. Coming past 6, our entry exit road. Just while that's going on, you can see the back of the entrance to the engine shed here, and of course, like all good engine sheds on RM Web, it has doors propped up at the outside. The one thing I don't have is workmen scratching their head to say how we're going to fix them. In actual fact, I did the doors the wrong way around because the bracing, I think, is wrong. I think I braced it the wrong way around, so they need to be changed, and then I will hang them properly as well. So we're coming around to track number 2. We've still got a way to go. Finger still on the hash. Back of the shed never had doors in had doors in Great Western days, but there was a buffer, or the track just stopped at the edge of the doors. It didn't run beyond, and I always wanted it to be able to run beyond, because other than I'm standing here, apart from when I'm standing here, you can't see the back of the engine shed. I suppose I could put cameras or something like that above. But anyway, we're coming around to track number 2. And here we go, into track number 2. And I'm going to press 2. So that's now committed as well. And then I'm going to carry on round to track number 3. Track number 3, clearly not big enough to put a loco on. I will use that to keep the coal wagon on. Maybe not that one that's got couplings on, that's an old Coopercraft open wagon, but it would be nice to get a proper coal wagon, loco coal wagon, and store it there. Typically though, in Great Western days, the coal wagon was actually stored where this open wagon is. It wasn't, all the tracks weren't used, there weren't as many tracks leading from the turntable. The back of the table allegedly was broken as well, but my intention is to have a loco coal wagon there, and I've still not resolved, in actual fact, where we're going to coal from. I think it'll just be somewhere, we just won't explain where it is. But Henley certainly never had a coal stage or anything, although back in the day the water tower there actually has a section that was used for coaling locos, but that was boarded up a long time ago. I think about 1910, 1920, something like that, and wasn't used for coaling locos at all. And my model shows it correctly with the panels boarded, the entrance boarded. So I'm just coming round to number 3. So I'm now going to program track number 3 by pressing that, and from there I'm now going to program 4, 5 and 6 as tails, and then that should be all the programming done, which means that at last, after nearly a year, I will actually have a proper working turntable.